We're on.
Welcome to New Beginnings Church and Friday Night Faith Fight. Thank you for watching on Facebook Live. Hit that share button, hit like. If you get mad, push that angry face. It don't bother me. I'm going to read from Romans, but I'm going to read a lot of scriptures so you all can turn to Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We're ministering from the thought of a series called The Measure of Faith. Romans chapter 12 verse 3, "For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, according as God hath dealt to every man the measure of faith." Now turn to Matthew. I'll give you a little bit. You go in a lot of churches now and you tell them to turn, and ain't nobody in there actually got a Bible. It's all on iPads and phones. And I usually listen for turning pages to see if they got there, and I look up and ain't nobody even got a page to turn. Look at your neighbor and say, "Jesus, scoot over."
Jesus, scoot over.
Yeah. I read you the text in Romans that we are not to think of ourselves more highly than we ought to think. For you out there in Facebook world, that's don't be self-righteous. I've heard a lot of that in church. Any time in church that you think anything you have said, acted, or done makes you have right standing with God, that would be exactly what the Bible calls self-righteous. If you think your hair, your sleeves, your pants, your dress, if you actually do think that has an impression in heaven, it's something you do, and that is self-righteousness. There is only one way that any of us ever enter in to God's glory and power, and that's through and by the slain blood of the Lamb. But when it comes to faith, we get to a place to where I don't think too many of us really realize where our faith is. I want to take this series and measure it. Whether it's weighing it in a balance or whether it's taking a tape measure to it. Because in studying, I realized that everybody Jesus encountered, He measured their faith. I know people in church that writes a check, mails it to a creditor, and ain't got no money in the bank, and they're saying, "I wrote that check by faith." No, you wrote a bad check, you broke the law, and you're going to end up in jail. He said to not think high-minded and to think sober about your faith. If you write a check and ain't got no money, you are not thinking sober. Matthew. Scoot over, Jesus. We're going to be in Matthew, we're going to be in Mark, and we're going to be in Luke. And it's a common story that looks like that there's a possibility that these three guys contradict themselves in what they talk about and deal with here. You know, the atheist world, they're always looking for contradictions in the Bible. Well, I'm going to preach three of them. I'm going to show you tonight when Jesus dealt with Matthew, what Matthew heard about his faith. When he dealt with Mark, what Mark heard about his faith. And when he dealt with Luke, what Luke heard about his faith. All at the same moment, the same event, and the same time. And all three apostles heard three different things. Matthew chapter 8, start reading in verse 23. And when he was entered into a ship, that's Jesus, his disciples followed him, and behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea, insomuch that the ship was covered with waves. But he was asleep. Everybody say, "Scoot over, Jesus!"
Scoot over, Jesus.
He was asleep, and his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, "Lord, save us, we perish." And he said unto them, "Why are ye so fearful, O ye of little faith?" Everybody see that that's a measurement? See, in Romans, to recap what we talked about last week, we talked about that Romans 12:3, God has dealt to every man that is among you the measure of faith. 2 Thessalonians tells us to ignore wicked and unreasonable men. They have no faith. So you start out with no faith. Then God gives you the measure of faith, and your measure of faith is the same measure as mine. None of us starts off with any advantage. We talked about birds. They're not no good at farming. How one way to measure or weigh little faith was the Bible tells us not to worry about our lives, what we eat, what we drink, what we put on. If you are worrying about those things, it's little. There's more to it than that. Here, it says in Matthew that Jesus entered into a ship and his disciples followed him. What we're supposed to do. You're supposed to have the thought and the mind and the attitude, anywhere you go, Jesus, I'm going to follow you in that direction, on that path, toward that destiny. If that's the way Jesus is walking, that's the way we need to walk. And this day, he's entering into a ship, and they're doing what they should do and follow him into the ship. But I came tonight to tell you that as you follow Jesus, that's exactly when the storms are going to come in life. Now come on, when you serve the devil didn't bother you. You was stupid and dumb and he left you alone. You was about to get killed, shot. You was losing everything. He didn't have to bother you. But the minute you accepted Jesus as Lord, a voice came up and said, "You ain't saved."
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. The Bible says that Satan comes immediately to steal the Word. He don't come next week. He don't come tomorrow. He comes immediately to steal the Word sown in your heart. And they are following him. They are doing what church folks should do. They're going where Jesus goes, entering where he enters. Come on. First off, are you on the path that Jesus is walking for your life? Come on, that's important. Yeah, my path ain't your path. Your path ain't my path. But I can guarantee you, in each and every individual's life, there is a path and there is a direction from God that says, "Follow me." Are we following him? Or are we following what Grandpa preached? Because he had to be right. He was old and he was a good saint of God. A lot of these grandmas and grandpas in the hills of eastern Kentucky could not read and could not write. And they came up with a lot of stuff that ain't in that book. There's about 10 things that I heard growing up that I looked for ain't in there. They taught me that in the last days, you ain't going to be able to tell summer and winter apart. That ain't in there. They taught things like it's better to put your seed in the belly of a whore than to spill it on the ground. You heard it. Some of you, it shocked you, but I heard that my whole life growing up. Almost every 5 services, they taught that. And what it caused was you had a bunch of young boys looking for prostitutes. Amen. It ain't in there. I asked some of you all to show me where that was at up near 22 years ago, and you told me, oh, I don't know right now, brother, but Sunday I'll have it to you. I'm still waiting. Now let's go to Mark. Same story. Notice though in Matthew, he said unto them, why are ye so fearful, O ye of little faith? Now, Mark the 4th chapter. Same story. And the same day, when even was come, he said unto them, let us pass over to the other side. And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship. And there were also with him other little ships. There arose a great storm, and the waves beat on the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him, and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the winds and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind and the sea ceased, and there was great calm. And then he said this, why are ye so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? When Matthew told the story, he said Jesus told us to follow him. And as we followed him into the boat, there arose a great storm. I cannot express enough to you that as you follow Jesus, that's when storms are going to arise. What you hear him say, let's go here, let's do this, let's do that. That's when the wind blows and the skies darken. And that's when water starts rising from ankle deep to knee deep to waist deep. Wind don't matter. Most of the wind out there is people's mouths. Come on, if you are easily offended, if your faith is timid, you will be intimidated. I've got friends and loved ones and people I care about that every negative post on Facebook, they are 100% convinced it's them. I don't care if you are posting about me. I'll go in and put a smiley face on it. Jesus said, let's go into a ship, and those storms arose. And if we're going to measure little faith here, what is it? For faith to come, you first have to hear God. Faith comes by hearing, and they heard him say, let's go to the other side. That was the vision, that was the dream, that was the hope, that was the goal of the day, is get in a boat with Jesus. He said we're going to the other side. Come on, that may be simple, but when he's telling you to do whatever it is he's called and assigned you to do, I came tonight to tell you that you don't need anything else. If he said it and you heard it and you follow him, that's all you need. Yes. I've told this story here before, but I ain't on Facebook. And Some of the visitors ain't heard it, but I got to believe in God for a boat. It meant a lot to me. I had lost my boat through a bad marriage and divorce, and church telling me that fishing was an idol to me, and that I needed to give that idol to God. And I need to quit. And I stood in the back of church one night and I heard the voice of God say, I miss seeing you on the lake. And I said, Lord, I'm not bank fishing. I want a boat. And I'd already believed for my Pepsi and pizza, so I knew. I started doing things. I did. I started getting seed in the ground. We had a neighbor that every spring he bought new boat batteries for his boat, whether he needed them or not. And I couldn't sew a boat into anybody or even a boat payment, but I realized I can buy a boat battery. So in the spring, I showed up at his boat with a battery. And my buddy's boats, I washed them and cleaned them and vacuumed them out and wiped on them. I'm getting seed in the ground and I'm getting my faith built up. And finally one day I got out Mark the 11th chapter, which every time I use my faith, I will use that verse. What things, and it says things. For those of you that's got a problem with stuff, what things means anything is a thing. If it's a thing, that's what he's talking about. It's a thing. What things, and then the next qualification is, what things soever you desire. A lot of people say, well, I don't pray about things and stuff. You're trying to sound humble, and you're being self-righteous. Come on, we do a lot of things sound big in church, and look big, and act big, and talk big. But there's really only one big in church.
Yeah.
I got my verses out. What things soever you desire when you pray, Lord, I need something that floats. I want a platform to stand on the water, and I'd like for it to be blue. God, I believe I receive a boat. I had $700. 7 something. And God said, faith without works is dead. You'll remember this time in my life. He said, if you believed you received a boat, you'll go to Car Fork Marina, by faith, and rent a boat slip. I don't have no boat. I got $700 and some, and I go to the marina and I go in and tell that girl, I want to rent a boat slip, and she's all excited and happy, and she said, well, do you want one that's covered or uncovered? And I said, what's the price? And she said, the covered ones are $700 and some, and I said, well, that's what I want. She gets her paperwork out, and she says, what kind of boat you got? Come on, Satan comes immediately to stop, to hinder, to make you doubt. Storms and winds arise. Every time you attempt to follow or believe God, what kind of boat you got? I don't know. She said, you mean you got a boat and you don't know what kind it is? I said, I do not know, ma'am. She said, how big is it? I said, I don't know. What kind of motor does it have on it? Is it a Mercury? Is it an Evinrude? I said, I don't know. And she said, well, sir, go home. Read on the side of the boat what kind it is, how long it is, and what kind of motor it's got. For insurance purposes, I got to know this before I can let you have this shed. And I said, well, ma'am, let me tell you how it is. I believed God for a boat, and He gave me directions to come to this boat dock and rent a shed. You are hindering me from obeying God. I'm going to leave, and it's going to be between you and Him whether I'll obey or not. I start out the door, and she says, well, wait. She said, I'll rent you the slip. Then you can come back and tell me what kind of boat it is. I filled my paperwork out, and I had to the dollar exactly enough money to rent that slip. And as I'm walking out of the marina, Pastor David Licklider. Now, if you don't like David, just go somewhere else. I've been with David a long time. David is walking through the boat dock parking lot, and he says, what are you doing, Todd? I said, I just rented a slip for my boat. He said, what kind of boat you got? I said, I don't know. David said, I know what you're going to pull it with. I hadn't thought about that. No, we ain't as smart as we think we are sometimes. I did not think that I had a little Geo-Prism car then that looked like an egg. You could pick it up and set it around if you needed to in a real bad hurry. I was big then, I barely fit. It looked like a dinosaur getting out of an egg every time I got out of that car. He said, I know what you're going to pull it with. I said, you do what? He said, I seen you walking in the marina, and God told me He missed seeing you on the water. Same thing God said to me in that church. And He told me to take you to the house and give you the keys to my Chevy Suburban. Yeah. Well, you may not believe in it. Well, walk everywhere you go. I'll tell you how to get on your feet again. Miss 3 payments on your truck, and that car lot will put you on your feet again. Well, I'm excited. So excited. I leave my Geo-Prism at the marina, and I'm wanting to show my dad my Suburban. Can't wait. Men around here, anything with motors in it excites us. I've always said, you put a motor on a suitcase, we'll figure out how to ride it through the yard one way or another. I've got a Suburban. I'm showing Dad my Suburban, and he tells me, go check on so-and-so. They're behind on a payment. I go to check on these people. Sure enough, they've lost their job, and they said, but Todd, listen. I've got an old venture bass boat out there I'm going to sell and give you every dollar of it. I said, you got a what out there? He said, I have an old venture bass boat out there that I'm going to sell and give you all every dollar of it. And I said, well, how about we hook that old venture bass boat to the back of my Suburban, and everything going to be squared up for a while. Now, come on, that may not sound like much to you, but that same process works in every area of life if you believe and trust God and follow Him when He tells you to do something. If you act on it and obey it, by evening time, your yard's going to look a whole lot better than it did that morning. I went from having no boat to I got a Suburban and I got a boat, and I ain't been without one since. Hearing it. They heard Jesus say, let us go to the other side. But then, while they are following Him, winds arise and winds blow and water rises in the boat. And Jesus is doing what Jesus does. He's asleep. Let me tell you today, that thing you're tore up about, that thing that keeps you up at night, God has not lost 1 minute's sleep over that problem that keeps you up. Come on. He told them go to the other side, and once they started getting their feet wet, and you got to realize half these disciples was professional fishermen. It was not their first time being in a boat in the middle of a storm. You will find yourself, if you're weak in faith, worrying over something you've already overcome.
Ooh, hallelujah.
Amen.
You've defeated it once, but you get weak in faith, you worry about it again. Don't think Satan ain't come to me and said, diabetes is back. Come on. Am I the only one in here who ever does that way? You sinned Thursday, and that disqualified you with God, so now I'm bringing blood sugar back. Come on, that's what we go through. You got to figure out when you sinned Thursday, didn't disrupt heaven in such a way that God got up from the throne and said, look down there at Todd, what he's doing. Hey, y'all come over here and watch him. No. When they drove the nails in Jesus' hands, he knew on that Thursday I was going to mess up and need grace and mercy. He knew it then.
Yeah.
I always go get my pictures. They got pictures of me swelled up in a coma with them tubes in me. When Satan comes to me and says, I'm going to put you in a coma again, I get them pictures out and say, come here, devil. Look at this.
Yeah.
You know what I did to sickness once through and with the faith that God is. Don't forget your triumphs. Don't forget that you are a professional fisherman and this ain't your first time in a storm.
Amen. Amen.
They had saw waves before. If you're out there catching them and you know it's coming a hurricane, you ain't coming in until they quit biting. I've been there. But I got to looking at the wind. One of the characteristics of little faith is you start looking at the circumstances around you. Come on.
Yes.
Little faith is that. They were doing what He told them to do, obeying God and following Him. But when they heard the sound of the wind and they saw the size of the waves, they got to thinking, boy, that wind's loud. Them waves are big. It's coming in the boat. And Jesus is asleep. He don't care anything about us. Turn to Luke. Luke 8. Matthew 8, Mark 4, Luke 8. I love this Friday night service because since 1994, I've preached faith and always been in a hurry. I only had 1 or 2 nights to do it. And I was trying to say some of the same things I might be saying right now, but in 1 or 2 nights of doing it, I had to take 75 thoughts, 15 stories, and condense it all into 2 nights, and I have never felt like I preached faith right till now. Faith ain't something you get in a hurry about. Matthew told the same story. He told us to get on a boat. Wind was loud and waves were big and water come in the boat and he was asleep and we go and wake him up and he rebukes us and tells us, oh ye of little faith. And then Mark tells the story and it's the same story. He told us to go. He told us to get in a boat. He mentioned to us that we're going to the other side. And Mark hears, how is it that you have no faith? And then Luke chapter 8, verse 22. Now it came to pass on a certain day that he went into a ship with his disciples, and he said unto them, let us. That's a key point right there. Jesus is never telling you to go anywhere, give anything, show up somewhere, enter into something, start something that He's going to make you do it alone.
Yes.
He said, let us. In other words, He's there with you. I like you being with me. I enjoy it, but at the end of the day, if you walk off and leave and there wasn't nobody here tonight, you know what I'd be doing? I'd try to have that Facebook Live on, and I would be preaching this hard to these pews. That's right. That's what He told me. That's the path He told me to walk on. That's the direction He told me to go in. And I've learned not to look at the waves, listen to the wind, feel the water, but just keep going in the direction He told me to go. He said, let us. And one of the things I think we do, especially in a Pentecostal church, is we get so focused on where we are going that we can't enjoy the ride to get there.
Yeah, we do.
Come on. Everybody here has got an idea of what they think this church is going to be, how big it's going to be, what it's going to look like, how many people's in it, who we're going to touch, who we're going to reach. But that's where we're going. We need to stop and enjoy the boat ride. Most rednecks, if you put them on a boat in a bunch of waves, we're going to be out on the nose of that boat going, woo!
That's right.
Ah, here comes another one. I'm getting up front. You got to ride the last one. You know what that is? That's people not moved by what they see, but they're enjoying the journey.
Amen.
Do you even enjoy one day? Church people's the saddest, most beat up. They're the most life-draining people you would ever be around. Y'all forget I've traveled for a lot of years. I've been in a lot of different flavors. And what causes it is every one of them thinks God did not mean what He said when He said it. That ain't what He meant, brother. You taking this healing stuff too far. Now, Jesus healed when He was on the earth, but you taking it too far now. That ain't what He meant. If that's not what He meant, He would not have said it. If He told you we are going there, that is where He wants you to go.
Amen.
Enjoy the journey. It's a lot of fear company taking on the $700 I had and buying a boat slip and ain't got no boat. Come on, that wasn't a small thing. It was all I had. And figure this out. A lot of times, God will ask you for all you have. The reason He don't ask you for more is you don't have more. Oh, that went over big.
Yeah.
Jesus. Let's go to the other side. If you go back and look at this story, Jesus had just preached all day long, and the crowd gathered down to Him at the seashore, and He had to use Peter's boat to preach in. The crowd was so big, and when He left that boat, He let them catch a pile of fish and showed them how to do it and called them into the ministry. He's tired. Come on. We need to learn how to rest. I'm talking about sleeping. I'm talking about resting in that book. If He says, this is what I want you to have, that and that alone should be enough. See, what the disciples should have done, what they should have experienced, is Peter should have stood up when they started seeing and hearing the wind and the waves. And he should have got out on the front of that boat and rode that boat like a bucking bronco and yelled and screamed, Jesus said we're going to the other side. I'm going to ride this thing all the way over.
Amen. Amen.
Come on. They should have been arguing who got to sit out on the front of that thing. You ain't getting all day up here, Peter. It's my turn. Jesus is asleep, and we're going to ride this storm all the way to the other side. That's how people of faith thinks. If God says you have it, nothing around you should move or hinder you.
Amen.
Nothing.
Yes.
They got afraid, and where there is the presence of fear is the absence of faith. Where there is the absence of fear is the presence of faith. There's another option, and it's where I get my title from. They knew he was in the bottom of that boat asleep. In reality, they started talking amongst one another. He's down there asleep. Can you believe that? Come on. That's what it's like when we start looking at one another.
Yeah.
Come on. You wouldn't believe what so-and-so did. And he says he's a God-called preacher. Come on, that's exactly what they was doing to Jesus. And this boat is sinking. We're going to drown. And he's asleep. Sometimes you can be, oh, this is real good. You can be a follower of Jesus and not have a clue what kind of integrity the man you're following has or what kind of God he is. You're just following. Come on, there's plenty of people out there tonight that are followers of Jesus, but they have no clue who he is. Come on. That go over your head? How can they? Just look around in a church house. There's people that's never appropriated the promises of God, and they've been in church 35 years and not got one prayer answered.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Get mad, get happy, or move up. I know what it's like. I've had storms arise. I've been through divorce in a Pentecostal church where nobody stood at my side and showed me love and concern. But it was like I had leprosy because I would go into your churches and I remember you pastors asking me where my ex was, and they knew good and well where she was. You know what I'd tell them? She's at her mom and dad's. Because she was. Yeah. They wanted me to tell them the breakdown and the story everywhere I went. Where is she? She's at her mom and dad's. Come on, I've been through something. I heard the doctor's report. He's only got 4 hours to live. You want to realize how big a wave that is and how loud that wind is. But I found out that day I was not no novice in faith. This wasn't my first rough boat ride. I got on the front of that thing and I rode it like a bucking bronco. If they say I'm dying, you said that if I honor my father and mother, I'll live long.
Yes.
Ride that storm. Enjoy the journey. You may not be where God has assigned you. You may not be doing what He's called you to do, but follow Him and enjoy the journey all the way.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
They were following Him. Didn't even have a clue who they had on the boat with them. You can see miracles and never experience them. You can see healing and never get healed. You can watch God prosper other people and never prosper in your own home and in your own life. Anything that you get from God, you are going to have to be honest. Where am I in faith? Am I at a place of no faith? Or do I have the measure? Or is my faith little? A strong person of faith hears God say, let's go to the other side. And ain't nothing can deter them from the thought of my Lord and Savior just told me that we going to the other side of this lake. I don't care what it looks like, feels like, sounds like. He said I'm going over there. Let's go.
Amen.
They started. He's asleep. They get mad at Jesus. Have you ever believed God for something that you desperately needed? You had to be healed right now. And it seemed like, well, He's asleep. Come on. You ever had to have a bill paid by Friday, and Friday morning it seems like everything around you's drowning and He's asleep? What you should do, the ultimate thing you should do, if you are in that situation, I'll tell you, I would have rode the front of that boat for a while, but when they got to talking about Jesus being asleep, this is my title, I would have went down in the bottom of that boat and said, Jesus, scoot over, son. If you're going to sleep, I've made my mind up. I'm going to do what God is doing today. I'm going to be a part of what His activities are today. And if He's asleep, scoot over, Jesus. I'm laying right here with you in this storm, and I'm going to sleep.
Amen.
Amen.
Bless the Lord.
Yes, Lord.
That's right.
Scoot over, Lord. If you sleeping, I'm laying there with you and sleeping. And if this boat sinks, it'll go like a submarine under the water, because whatever you are doing, Jesus, that's what I want to be doing.
Amen.
Amen. Better than y'all shout.
Yeah. Amen. Amen.
Yeah. He's asleep, I'm asleep. He says, go, I go. If He goes, I follow. Not anything changes that. Not anything deviates from that. If He's asleep, what good is worrying going to do me? If He's not worried about it, what do you think you worrying is going to do? Come on.
Amen.
Notice last week, don't think about what you're going to eat. Don't think about what you're going to drink. Don't think about what you're going to wear. Worrying people are meditating on the end result that you do not desire. Them disciples are thinking they don't desire for that boat to fill up and sink. And they're thinking on it. They don't desire to drown. But they're thinking on it. Not one of them hit on the idea that Jesus preached all day, used their boat, we caught a bunch of fish, and walked a long way. He's tired. He ain't worried about this storm. He's asleep. I'm going to go right down there and scoot him over and sleep with him. That's the difference in people strong in faith. They want to do whatever it is that God's doing at that moment.
Yes.
Is that really your desire? Are you determined that you participate and do what He does as He does it? Luke 8:22, now it came to pass on a certain day that He went into the ship. He was already there. With His disciples, they are following Him. And He said unto them, let us go over to the other side of the lake. And they launched forth. If you slow down in your study time, you'll see things in the Word. If you meditate the Word like you worry, you'll finally understand it.
Yes.
Every second you waste worrying is a second that you could have used beneficially to meditate and think about His Word. He said there, they launched out. What's everybody talk about pertaining to their ministries? They want to launch them. How many times you ever heard He launched His ministry? Well, this day, they launched their ministries. And the storms and the winds came. Where the teaching of faith has erred is we tell so much of the good stuff that we make it sound like if you finally get in faith, you ain't never going to have no temptations, trials, or tests.
Yeah.
And I came tonight to preach a different sermon to you. If you follow Jesus and obey God, you are stepping into a landmine field of temptations, of tests, and of trials. There's going to be explosions all around you, shattering your hearing and trying to overcome your thought life. But you need to figure out, what was the last thing God said to me? Always go back to that. What's the last thing He told me to do? Because that's where He still is. Until you do the last thing He's told you to do, He's not going to tell you to do something else.
Yes.
He's still there waiting. He tells you to go to the other side, you're going to go to the other side. If He tells you and you launch out and opposition comes at you, shout, spin, leap, sing, rejoice, and realize He told me to do it, and Satan has come immediately to steal the word that God sowed in my heart. He's trying to stop Jesus, and I'm going to say to Jesus, scoot over. I'm laying right down here with you.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Launch out. Everybody's trying to launch their family, launch their ministry, launch their home, launch this. Well, launch it, but be ready to ride some waves, ignore some wind, ignore some wet feet, and focus on what it was He told you to do.
Thank you, Lord.
Bless Him, Lord. Bless Him.
It's good whether you all get it or not.
Amen.
It's fired up.
Launch forth, but as they sailed, He fell asleep. What should they have done? Should have fell asleep. But you had arrogant fishermen on there that was doing things like, I know how to operate this sail. It's what I do for a living. I'll get us through this storm. Now you don't know what you're doing. You need to raise this anchor up. That they were trying to prove that they was the big shot, highfalutin guys of the day, just like you in the church. Well, brother, I ain't did this in 35 years. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're self-righteous. You think because you do this or you don't do that, that God gets up in heaven and goes, boy, you see brother so-and-so, he ain't told a bad joke in 35 years. Do you actually think that what you do, it took the blood and suffering of Jesus for you, for you to be made righteous or have right standing with God? The length of your skirt, the length of your hair, how long you pray, how much you run, how much you give in an offering, none of that makes you have right standing with God. You are never going to be more right than the day you was born again.
Amen.
That day you became righteous, and you'll never be more right than you was that day. Bunch of fishermen. They're watching the winds and trying what they can do. He fell asleep, and there came down a storm, a wind on the lake, and they were filled with water and were in jeopardy. They came to him and awoke him, saying, Master, we perish. How many of you ever did that? You do know that's the wrong way to approach God. You don't come boldly to the throne of grace and go in and say, God, they're going to shut off my power, take my truck, foreclose on my home. I'm going to lose everything. That's not how you approach it. I did that. Yeah. Lost a home. Yeah. Lost a wife. Every time I was doing that stuff, God would hear it and think, well, okay, that must be what He wants.
That's right.
What your faith will, at whatever level we measure your faith out in this series, and it's going to take a while. We're going to have to understand little faith first. Whatever your faith measures, it'll never rise above your words. If you are not saying it at a higher level, you'll never go to a higher level. As long as you're speaking what you're going, well, brother, I couldn't say I'm healed. My leg's still hurting. You'll never be healed.
Right.
Come on.
That's right.
Your faith will never rise above your confession. If you do realize during these series of messages that your faith can improve, the only way to improve it is through hearing His Word and saying about you what He says about you.
Yes. Amen.
Master, don't you care that we perish? What does that tell you? They did not know who they was following and watching and walking with and in the boat with. They were followers of Christ, but they didn't know Him. Mm-hmm. Their thoughts was, He don't care that I perish. Yeah. God does care.
Yes. Yes.
When you think He don't love you, that tells me real quick, fast, and in a hurry, you don't know the God you're following. When you think He's mad at you. Come on, church. He's going to get you. He's going to get you. Trust me, if He wanted you got, you would have been got a very long time ago. Jesus bled and died for that He's going to get you mentality to get out of the church. That's what they were thinking. He's asleep and He don't care if we lose this boat and die and drown. They don't know the God they're following. One of them should have stood up. You can tell by his reaction. Master, Master, we perish. He arose and rebuked the wind and the raging water, and it ceased. There was a calm. And then he looked unto them and said, where is your faith? What's that saying? He expected them. Just like he expects you to stop every storm in your life, to silence every loud wind in your life, to dry up every soggy, wet place in your life with your faith. Come on. He wasn't happy that they was down. Some of you, I'm just trusting God that one of these days He's going to heal me. You're expecting Him to eventually wake up and stop the storm, and He would look at you. Come on.
Amen.
You ain't trusting God. You're just trying to sound spiritual. Well, what's the difference? Matthew telling this story. He says that Jesus stopped the storm and looked at them and said, "Oh, ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" When Mark tells it, it's a little bit different. And he said unto them, "Why are ye so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" Matthew tells it that he measured their faith as little. Mark tells it that he accused them of having no faith. And Luke tells it that he went, "Where is your all's faith even at?" Come on. Same story. Which one's right? Every one of them. See, when God deals with me about my faith, get this in your head. He's going to say the same things to me and you. But I'm going to hear about my faith as it applies to me. Matthew was in such a shape that day that when Jesus measured his faith, Matthew heard, "Oh, ye of little faith." And Mark was in such a shape that day that when Jesus measured his faith, he heard, "How is it that you have no faith?" And Luke, when he heard the wind and the waves and wondered why Jesus wasn't helping, he heard, "Where is your faith even at?" It ain't a contradiction. It's three men at three different places in their faith life. And when Jesus spoke to them, He measured each person's faith right where it was. He said, "Oh, Matthew, your faith is little." He said, "Mark, you ain't even got no faith." And Luke, I can't even find evidence of where your faith is.
Yeah.
You think He ain't concerned about what you did with the measure of faith? That's all He's looking for.
That's right.
Yeah.
You want to know how to please God? Walk by faith, not by sight. But without faith, it is impossible to please Him. I may not hear God. Me and you facing the same situation. I may hear God about my faith and it be completely different than you. But if both of us is honest and accepts what He said about our faith and stands up, we'll overcome the storm.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
Because He expected any of them to stop that storm. There's nothing changed. It's not because they was apostles. They was not an impressive group of men that day. You had professional fishermen screaming like little girls, "Jesus, get up! Don't you even care that we're going to die?" They was not impressive men that day.
Yeah.
But as a church, we need to take this series of messages and figure out where our faith actually is.
Yes.
And some of you are going to see you may be strong in faith for prosperity, but can't even find where you ever had faith for healing. Come on.
Yeah.
You may be strong in family, in the order of the house, but weak as water when it comes to paying your bills. That's the thing about faith. I want us to recognize our weak points and be honest. Weigh it correctly.
Yeah.
Measure it correctly. Repent and start developing your faith. Faith can develop. See, Jesus one time was preaching forgiveness hard. You want to know what real holiness is? There's so many opinions on what holiness is and what holiness ain't. First, if you understand grace, I'm going to tell you where, but you can go find it. He said, by grace are you made sanctification. I've heard all my life, we do this because it's living a sanctified life. Grace made you sanctified. But what is true holiness? If I love you, I won't steal from you. If I love you and really mean it, I won't lie to you. I won't covet your stuff. You want to know what holiness is? It's love.
Yeah.
If I love you, I'm not going to harm you.
Yeah.
If I love you, I can't hurt you. Jesus is preaching that message one day, and the disciples are struggling with it. They've been around him enough that they knew anything they bring up, he's going to bring up faith. After a while, they figured that out, that no matter what the situation is, if you don't want to hear a message about faith, don't go to Jesus with the situation. He's teaching and talking about love and forgiveness, and he's preaching it so strong that they ask him, how many times in a day do I got to forgive Peter if he sins against me? 7? And Jesus said no. 7 times 70. And they ain't wanting to do it. They're not wanting to bring it up. But I know they're standing there thinking, 7 times 70? If Peter sins against me that much, I'm going to kill him. Oh, come on. You've got neighbors that did you wrong 25 years ago, once, and you still ain't forgive them yet. Come on. They heard that and they knew good and well. If we bring this up, he's going to hit you faith. So they thought they'd trick him, and they come to him and said, Lord, increase our faith. They was thinking, if I'm going to have to forgive you more than 70 times 70, if I'm going to have to forgive you that much. I go to him a lot because that's my neighbor, my fishing buddy. No doubt through life, we've had to forgive each other a few times. I'll tell you a funny one about, when was the lawnmower fight? Your lawnmower fight, not mine.
A couple years ago.
About 2 years ago, I just bought a brand new bass boat. I believe God had a nice Chevy Tahoe. This guy's cutting my grass. Lynn's trying to help. They're up on a big hill. Lynn loses control of the lawnmower.
Wet grass.
Wet grass. He he jumps out of the boat. The lawnmower comes on down the hill, crashes right into my Tahoe. And I don't mean a little crash. It welded both doors on that side shut. I hear a knock. William says, don't get mad at me. I said, what? He said, don't be mad at me, but he said, I got to tell you something. He said, I've had an accident. And I said, well, are you hurt? Are you okay? He said, yeah. But your truck ain't. Now, I wasn't exactly completely Jesus-like that day. I thought, Lynn, you better go pray to God and thank Him that it didn't go through the middle of that brand new bass boat, because with the truck, I can stand here and say, Bub, I love you. It don't matter. But if it had been that boat, I probably would have been, oh, God, kill us all. Never stopped us a bit. It's just a truck. Come on, what is it that's just a to you and you can't get over it? It's just a post on Facebook. Just two people talking about you and Dairy Queen. Come on. What's your just? Jesus preached that so strong that the disciples knew if we bring this up, he's going to talk about faith. And they said, Lord, they thought they had him. Lord, for us to do that, you are going to have to increase our faith. And you know what happened? They got a real good faith message.
Amen.
You're not going to talk to God, but He's going to talk to you about faith. You're not going to approach Him with any problem that He don't tell you the faith solution to that problem. They said, Lord, increase our faith. And He tells them, if you had faith as a grain of mustard seed, you would say to this sycamore tree, be thou cast into the sea, and it should obey you. He turned it on them and told them, if you are going to be successful with faith, you're going to have it like a seed. Now, everybody distorts that. And they say that mustard seed's so little, and he even brought that up in one of the ways he told it. He's not talking about little faith. He's telling you have faith like a seed. What do you do with a seed? You plant it, you cover it, you water it, forget about it. I know a lot of farmers, and my dad planted a lot of things and successfully grew all of them. Not one time did I see him plant a seed today, and tomorrow morning wake up and Daddy be out there. I planted that corn yesterday. It ain't, look, I planted some here, it ain't nothing coming. That's what you do.
Yeah. Yes.
You speak that by His stripes I'm healed, and you walk away from the prayer line. My legs still hurt. I must not be healed. That's just like Daddy. Hey Todd, come out here. I told you to plant beans with this corn, did you? I don't see no evidence of it. Corn coming up, I reckon we planted it. Did we put it in our eye? That's what you do when you walk away from the prayer line, or you write that offering check and you're believing God for a certain need, and quick as you give the check, you're thinking, I don't know how I'm ever going to pay that bill. I thought I planted corn.
Yep.
And you know what you do? It would have been like Daddy going, I thought I put corn there yesterday and told you to go to the truck and get the seed bag. Let's plant some more corn here. You plant some more beans. It ain't come up yet. That's what you do when you pray about something and take a stand, and then the next day you go to God and ask Him for the same thing again.
Yeah. Yes.
Come on.
Yes.
We've all had an apple out of that bag. It's even been preached. You need to pray and keep on praying. Ask and keep on asking. But when you ask for what you asked for yesterday, what you are saying is that you didn't believe you received it yesterday when you asked.
That's right.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes.
Have faith like a seed. Plant it. Walk away, forget about it. Water it. Keep weeds out of it, forget about it. That's how you have to do faith.
Yes.
You plant it by the words of your mouth. You water it by the washing of the water of His Word. And you forget about it by trusting Him in the middle of the loud winds, in the middle of the wet feet, in the middle of the rocking boat. It does not move you because He told you to plant it. You can't see it yet. It's not sprouted yet. And there's more weeds there than there is what I planted. But I'm not moved by that. No, the way my dad did that is he would walk a neighbor out there and say, this row, and there ain't nothing there. This row is bean and corns. And then he'd say, I got some of them good white half-runner beans from that old man down the holler. That's what that row is. And there's not a sign of either one of them. You get over to the other garden and it's strawberry plants. It's tomato plants. Seed is once you sow it, no matter what goes on, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it sounds like, no matter what it feels like, if you planted it, that's what you expect to grow in that garden. My dad didn't worry about it. He actually started right then preparing for the harvest.
Yes.
Yeah. He started gathering up buckets. Make me clean. Well, then probably help me clean. He started getting bushel baskets, storing them. He got everybody a hole because he knows once that plant comes up, these weeds going to come up, and there ain't no weeds and there ain't no plant there yet. But everybody, when I was little, I had me a little bitty hole. He started checking around what's Dry Fork Market giving for beans. This place is giving $20-some a bushel. I remember getting $21, $22 a bushel. And I remember the moment he planted that seed, he started talking to us about the harvest. And he would tell me every year, now corn's mine, but every bit of them beans, every bushel you pick, boy, we'll sell it and I'll give you the money. That's how you use faith like a seed. You let it go and you start thinking about the end result that you do want. You meditate the desired end result that book promises you. You don't worry and meditate on the desired end result that you do not want.
Yes.
They would have institutionalized Dad if he woke the whole family up every morning and was out there standing, cussing, kicking dirt. Where's my corn at? I planted it. That's exactly what you do. When you believe God and you let circumstances tell you don't know who you're following, what kind of God He is. He is not a man that He should lie.
Amen.
If He told you that you are going there and your life don't look like you'll ever become what He told you'll be, you'll never do what He assigned you to do, forget about the wind and the rain and the storms and realize He didn't lie to me when He said that, and I'm going to either rest or enjoy the ride. Everybody stand. So what is little faith tonight? It's a person that follows God but don't know Him. It's a person doing what God told them to do, but not trusting Him to get them to the end of it. It's a person that lets life around them speak to them louder than the Word speaks. And look at the end of this. He said, "Where is your faith?" And they, being afraid, wondered, saying one to another, "What manner of man is this? Even the winds and the sea and the water obey him." That tells you they didn't know who they had in the boat. They were saying, "What kind of dude is this? He just stopped the wind. What kind of dude is this? He just calmed the sea." But then it says this. And I want you to notice, every time, it's going to take a while, on little faith. He rebuked them over their faith being little, but He never withheld an answer from any of them.
Amen.
Every case where He measures their faith as weak or little, they still get their miracle. So I've not come to tell you you've got low faith and it ain't going to happen. No. You're going to get your miracle. But you're going to figure out to grow your faith and that you can make your miracle happen yourself if you take faith as a seed. Because look at this. They're saying, "What manner of man is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey Him." And then it says, verse 26, "And they arrived." I came tonight to tell you, your faith may be small, but as your pastor, you are going to arrive.
Amen.
You're going, I prophesy that to everybody in the sound of my voice. If He told you that's what your destiny is, what is your destiny? It's where you're going. If He told you that's your destiny, I say tonight, your faith may be small, but after He stops the storm and the winds and the waves, you will arrive. If you are out there in the Somerset area, get ready. Tuesday night, the 13th, I will be at Faith Training Center. Come out expecting. And then the next Tuesday, I will be at Life Abundant Healing Rooms. Pray up, study up, come prepared. We are going to cause the devil some trouble the next 2 Tuesdays in Somerset, Kentucky. In Jesus' name, Lord, I pray that my church and people and friends and family and partners be honest about their faith, but start smiling because we will arrive.
That's right.
In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen.